years ago, I don't know how long ago, I don't have his name because I just thought of talking about this. There was a man that said he had come up with a way to convert water into fuel, and he had a car where water was the fuel. He did die under mysterious circumstances, and when he did die prior to his death, he went out of his way to tell his family and friends, if I die, I did not kill myself, I did not die in an accident, I'm very careful, it's because they want me dead. And he died. So
I believe that's happened to a couple people.
The Late Night Legends podcast is meant for a mature audience. Topics covered may be violent or sexual in nature and are not suitable for sensitive listeners. Please be aware of your surroundings. For specific trigger warnings, please see the episode's show notes. Testimony shared by guests of this show are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Late Night Legends hosts or staff. This podcast and any linked materials should not be considered medical or professional advice, nor is the information a substitute for the expertise or treatment from a professional. Listener discretion is advised.
It makes sense when you look at these incredible structures that we don't really have an explanation for.
A lost civilization which seems to have been forgotten or erased.
And that was truly the beginnings of civilization as we know it. But I think it was a restarting of civilization, a reboot, not the actual beginning.
And in the book, he explains how the historical presence of Tartaria was deliberately censored and deleted.
Hello and welcome to Late Night Legends, where I am one of your hosts, Joan. We have another host, Kay, and we have our host, Frank, tonight, who is going to be giving us the topic of post-advanced civilization theory. Just some quick announcements before we get into this topic that we have a great lineup. Today is the last day of September, so you know that we're getting into spooky season. So we're going to kick it off with Christina Bloom as a guest next week. And then the week after that, we have Stormfrog and Paige coming back on. And then we are also going to be doing a Halloween episode. And there's one more episode that we have wrapped in there. And we're so excited for you all to join us for spooky season. So keep in tune with that. Kay, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, I would like to add that we are still hiring. So if you are interested in being part of our team, our emails are still open. Go ahead and type us up a little message on why you want to join our team and send it on in. We'd love to hear from you. And then also we are so happy to announce that we hit 100,000 listens on Spotify.
Yay!
So quick second to celebrate that.
Woo.
Awesome. Thank you all for listening to us. It's been great. So as a thank you for listening, we are going to be doing a giveaway. So we're still trying to decide what that is. We would love to hear from you what you would like to see that be. So put that in the comments. Let us know what you want for us to give away. And we'll give it away. Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe it'll be like an interaction with us of some kind.
yeah,
So.
we like that idea.
Yeah. So yeah, we are not giving away PS5s like my husband has asked. We are not doing that. Unless, are we?
Are we not?
Oh.
Is that out of the question? Did we decide we're not doing that? I was kind of hoping that we could.
Give away a PS5?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you are you have the petty cash for this show. So you tell me, do we have PS5 petty cash?
Let us know in the comments if you would like to win a PS5. Also,
let us know if you'd like a PS5 or if you want to join us for a Twilight watch party instead.
Also, a couple shows back, we said that if anybody posted on social media of them holding up a boombox playing our show, that Frank would send them $50, and nobody's done that yet. So if you want $50, hold up a boombox.
It will be a
Playing our
Venmo
show.
directly from me. It won't be petty cash money. It'll be directly from my wallet. If you're I might throw a couple of extra dollars based on creativity. So if you're like on a train with a bunch of people around or something annoying, like if you're on the beach and somebody's just trying to tan and live their best life and you're interrupting them with our show, might throw a little bit extra in there. Maybe.
Don't be a nuisance to society. We don't promote that.
I want to be part of the story 10 years after it happened. They're like, remember that jerk off when we were trying to study at the library? He walked in with a boombox. What was he listening to again? What was the name of that show?
That is truly guerrilla advertisement.
I want to be that. I want to be that annoyance.
I want to be where the people are. Yeah. That's as far as I can go with that song.
Why?
Because it's like
Tell me about your dingle hopper.
my dingle. I won't do it now. I'll do it for you later. I sing that song in the most annoying way, and my husband hates it. Hates it. And it's the one way I truly know how to annoy.
I wish you could change. You know, like every gaming console, when you turn it on, it has a chime. If he wins the PS5, I wish we could change the chime on the PS5 to have a clip of you singing that song every time he turns on the console.
Thank you so much for continuing that sentence. Because there was a long pause where you just said, I wish you would change. Or I wish you could change. And I'm like, me too, bud.
Oh, no.
Oh, the joke.
I go to therapy every Monday. I'm really trying.
I'm working on it.
Don't ever change.
Sorry.
Gosh.
You good?
No. Like, are you and I okay? Yeah, sure, we're fine.
I hope so.
Yeah.
All
What
right,
are the
guys.
comments on this show so far?
Okay, everybody. We're going to
Okay.
get into it.
Let's do
Tonight,
it.
we're going to talk about a theory that we are living in a post-advanced human civilization. There's a lot to unpack with it. There's probably a lot more than you think. But let's get down to it. So, I think, generally speaking, to give everybody an intro, I'm going to say that it's a very conspiratorial topic. And generally speaking, with conspiracies, as you know, I have a personal interest in them. A lot of times it is people connecting dots that sort of can be logically connected. Usually with conspiracies, somebody will take an event that actually did happen and attempt to explain it or skew the facts of what surrounded that event. And they'll say, well, it happened this way based on these facts within the way that I'm interpreting them. However, with this particular topic and this particular theory, a lot of it is, I'm going to say that it's this way without a lot of facts. So I will say that. That's the first part of this. So, there are some things that are going on in our world. There are some things that are established, sort of things that have happened or things that exist that suggest that this is what's going on. And so the idea is that we're living in a dystopia. And prior to our lifetime, or a few, recent generations, there was a civilization that had a lot more technology, a lot more capability to create structures and have technology. There's some things that I'll get into a little bit more, but something happened. A cataclysm of some type happened. Most people believe it was a flood. After this flood happened, some people believe it was a combination of like flood and wildfire. After that happened, not only did human beings for the most part die out, but a lot of the giant animals died out as well. Things like, think of like woolly mammoths and stuff is one that people like to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that getting right into it a little bit, some of the things that existed within the theoretical, civilization that we're talking about here prior to the cataclysm, magnificent structures that still some still do exist, is what one of the theories are. Some of these structures are like the pyramids, right? We really don't have a good explanation for the pyramids. Another thing I want to also preface while I'm starting off here. Last week, Joan presented a wonderful topic, Loeb, and we had a lot of visual support things. I don't want to necessarily do that. I want to add those in post because I want to just kind of explain things. And while I'm explaining things, I'll add visual things in post for the people that watch it on YouTube. But I kind of want to talk through these things. And, with that said, like, for example, the pyramids. Not only do we have the pyramids of Giza, which are the ones in Egypt that everybody's familiar with, and nobody really knows how we did it. We do know that it would have been very difficult for people even today to kind of construct those things. Even if we wanted to, even today, how could we even do that? And then if you study history, if you kind of study geography, you know that throughout the world, in different parts of the world, there's very similar pyramids all over the place. And there are pyramids that are in Mexico and pyramids in Asia, and like they all also geometrically align with constellations in a certain way. It's no secret, very factual. And you start to wonder, like, how did ancient Egyptians do that with the tools that they had, which are not very powerful tools? They didn't have trucks or anything. And so this whole thing is like, I feel like sort of a way to kind of explain that stuff. There's a lot to unpack here with other things too. For those of you listening, if you've ever heard the theory that there are giant human beings on our planet, or there used to be, part of this theory is that those giant human beings were part of this advanced human civilization. And there's a lot of people out there that like to talk about it, or like say like, oh, well, Bigfoot's connected to these giant people, or whatever it is. They're involved in this too. And so you might be wondering, before I get into some of the details, like, why is this not accepted as a factual thing that happened? And the reason that social media and the proponents of this theory like to say is that, generally speaking, as a society, we like to follow a certain status quo, especially when it comes to business. And currently, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that surround the concept of energy and things like the automotive industry and like oil and gasoline, right? So to give you an example of this, there was a man a few years ago, I don't know how long ago, I don't have his name because I just thought of talking about this. There was a man that said he had come up with a way to convert water into fuel, and he had a car where water was the fuel. Mm-hmm. He did die under mysterious circumstances, and when he did die prior to his death, he went out of his way to tell his family and friends, if I die, I did not kill myself, I did not die in an accident, I'm very careful, it's because they want me dead. And he died. So
I believe that's happened to a couple people.
Yeah.
It's like the Boeing cases right now.
It's like, well, Boeing had a couple of people that were whistleblowers that tried to say there is really bad quality assurance, and there are planes that are being manufactured with very big defects, and they're pushing them through to still go up in the air when they really shouldn't be. And, that would have cost the company a lot of money, and that, those people died. There's stuff like the executives. So like there's something that happened recently also with HP computers. Have you heard about this?
No.
So HP computers had two owners of HP. The two owners did a valuation of the company to get the company's worth before selling it. The valuation that was done on the company had these huge, crazy big numbers. And, they estimated that it had such a high worth. So they sold the company based on that projected worth. However, when the new owners realized that that was a very inflated valuation, those two prior owners of HP both died in mysterious circumstances. One died in a car accident, and then with a very short amount of time, the other owner, who was on a yacht near Italy, also perished under very strange circumstances, and I believe that investigation is still ongoing.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. That's
okay.
the one.
Interesting.
So, with that said, there are a lot of things that exist within structures that we have around this planet that are clearly old structures, and I can cite a few of them here in a moment. The theory is that the advanced human civilization that we're now living afterward, they had free and available energy. And the reason, this is again part of the theory, the reason that we don't accept it as part of our history is that the people that are pulling the strings and making a profit off of the current ways that we create energy are profiting from our current energy needs and our energy creation, do not want to get out there the fact that we maybe had the ability to create free energy for all. Right? So it kind of coincides there. So I'd like to give an example of one of the objects. So generally speaking, this kind of gets divided up into sort of three, I don't want to call it evidence, but there are three things that sort of support the idea that we're living a, post-advanced human civilization. The first one are structures, and I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail in a little bit. One of those examples are the pyramids. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is there's certain objects, artifacts that exist that suggest this as well. There's something called the Baghdad Battery, which in post I will put a picture of the Baghdad Battery. And that is something that was found. It was a device that was found. It was sort of in almost like a big clay pot. And we don't really know how it worked or what it is, but we found it. And the theory has been that it was a device that helped create energy. And by the way, there are plenty of people out there that believe the pyramids, like the reason the pyramids exist, were for energy storage and creation as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you want us to be faking our reactions to this picture? Like when you said Baghdad battery, should we be like, oh my
don't.
gosh,
Gosh.
wow.
You don't have to, but that's kind of fun anyway. I might just put your reactions in the thumbnail.
I might do it anyway. When you say and this thing, I'll go, oh.
I love YouTube thumbnails and how terrible they are with clickbait, where it's always like the person in the video is like, are like they'll like be pointing at something and there's like weird arrows, or like there's something like that's circled. It's like, oh, look at this. Like that's really wildly entertaining.
I clicked on one once, I think, because it was like a shark attack at water park. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then it was actually just a review of 10 different water slides. Like, well, and the thumbnail was somebody going down the slide into a shark's mouth.
That sounds like it would have been a really fun thumbnail to create.
So they got me.
So we got, we've got structures that support the theory. We've got artifacts that support the theory. We also have, evidence in the fact what's it called? Inside of rocks. What do they call it?
Sediment?
Minerals?
Yeah. So like, like if you see a rock and you see the layers, you can kind of see the history.
Yeah,
the word
sedimentary rocks.
Oh, yeah.
Sediment.
Right. Geologic evidence.
Okay. Topographical.
All kinds of big words. No, like so evidence for the cataclysm is where that comes into play. So we do have evidence that does suggest that this earth had some big floods, like huge floods, like 1,000-foot deep water in places where right now is land. We also have, to support the theory, that we had these huge continental fires. We have carbon sediment that's in rock that is found, where it would only ever be produced if we had a fire that was raging for years.
There are several creation myths that involve great floods. Noah and the Ark is one that's more commonly known because of the Christian mythology behind it. I do have a quick question, if you don't mind. I don't mean to pull us off topic if this is. This sounds a lot to me like Atlantis.
Atlantis is part of it. Atlantis is one of the societies that was advanced human prior to the Cataclysm. And if you know this, Atlantis was not always underwater. They say that Atlantis got put underneath the water because of the flooding.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. Atlantis is part of this. There's a lot to unpack here. So there's like the free energy stuff, giant animals, giant humans are part of it. Some of these buildings that are strange, like the pyramids, are part of it. We have artifacts that are part of it. We also have a lot of texts over the years that are part of this too. And that's a little bit, I feel like, not as good evidence, because fictional texts, it's hard to decipher like what's fiction and what's meant to be nonfiction based on when it was written and who was writing it. I'm somebody that kind of considers the Bible a bit of fiction, just letting you know.
It's mythology. We can say it's mythology. That's allowed.
Yeah. So that, and then we also have things like astronomy that also suggest, or can suggest, the way it's interpreted, that we're, living this in this post-apocalyptic thing. We also have old maps. Have you guys ever seen some old maps where things look completely different? Okay. Well, that's part of it too. We've got a lot of ancient maps. So, and it is empire of human civilization that exists. That's sort of a combination of like Europe and Asia, is the way most people, I think, kind of define it. And they pronounce it differently depending on who you ask, because it's, it's a weird non-official word. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to kind of support this thing. And so one of the biggest things that they talk about, if you look this up on TikTok, and there are a lot of videos on TikTok.
That's a generalized statement.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's
Just
a lot of videos. No, there's a lot of videos so there's a lot of videos of people who actually buy into this theory, right?
Yeah.
And one of the bigger things, and I wanted to have like a PowerPoint for you guys ready with some of the evidence that like I've seen, right? Because I've watched videos about this. I've seen some of this evidence. And instead of showing you pictures, I want you to kind of picture it in your head, because I think that also is very powerful. So there are some buildings around this planet and around this country, even the United States. We've got some really elaborate buildings, okay? And maybe if you can't think of one off the top of your head, and I don't know about the area Kay is in or the area Joan is in, but here in Chicago, we've got things like the Field Museum, Museum of Science and Industry. Some of the buildings downtown, like we used to have a building here in Chicago called the Federal Building that was very ornate, very huge in scale. And you can think, if you're not familiar, you can think of like things like cathedrals and stuff in Europe, because that falls into this category as well.
What's the one over in Europe somewhere that took like 650 years to build? It's
the Bastille. No.
Basilica.
There we go. Not
Yeah.
Bastille. Basilica.
Yeah.
They're still building it. It's not done.
So what's interesting, and what people have pointed out, especially with buildings here in the U.S., a lot of these really massive buildings, many of them, if you look at their Wikipedia and you look at their history, many of them say that they were built over maybe a 5-year time span in the 1800s, like late 1800s is when a lot of these buildings were built. And I think what really kind of interests people who go down this rabbit hole are, if you think of the technology that was available to people back then, a lot of people actually like using the term horse and buggy, because that was like one of the biggest way to transport materials. And sometimes if you look at these structures and you're thinking to yourself, man, a bunch of people with horses and shit like built this, it gets a little difficult to believe. So I can see that. I can also see that the fact that we're not building structures like those anymore, if we ever did. And I feel like a lot of people view it from the perspective of like, even if we wanted to build like the Basilica, would we even be able to really do it? Maybe not. Possibly not. And some people likely not. And some other people definitely not. So how did we build those? And, if we didn't build those, why do we tell ourselves that these buildings were built over a period of 5 years in the 1800s when really it was kind of improbable or impossible to do so? And that's when, you kind of come into like, okay, let's talk about why. They talk about the free energy stuff. And the one thing that I will say about this whole grand scope of this whole topic is that within the realm of science and scientists who have these discussions, many scientists are not even capable to have smart, intelligent discussions about it, believers or not. I think that if you're part of the scientific community, you should be open-minded enough to be able to have an intelligent discussion and say, okay, well, let's talk about this. And say, okay, well, I don't believe it. Let's look at these things together. Let's look at the rocks. Let's look at the evidence, and we'll decide. But one of the crazy, ironic things is one of the things that drives many people to subscribe to this theory is the fact that many people within the scientific community are so close-minded, they'll say, oh, it's absolute bullshit. I don't want to discuss it. And they have that attitude, which is hilarious, because what ends up happening, and I've noticed this, if you're a scientist or you're within that community and you've gotten a degree or degrees and you're used to being told a history and you subscribe to that history and your degree and your learning is based on that, and then somebody wants to challenge that, you do take it a bit personally. And that's why a lot of people do push back. I don't think it's a smart thing to push back, but that's, I feel like, what it ends up being. Like somebody's like, why would you question what we already have? But realistically, a true person of science would be like, let's talk about the narrative that we've got, and let's talk about the possibility that this may have happened. And that's really not happening. And what I'm saying is it's ironic that because it's not happening in the right way, it kind of adds fuel to the fire of some of the people who subscribe to this theory. And there are so many people on TikTok. There are key terms that you can search. So Tartarian Empire. I'll spell it right in the description. It's a hard word to say. Very simple. A lot of people have a problem saying that word like me. You could look up mud flood too. Mud flood is a reference to the cataclysm that happened that would have been responsible for whatever happened to humans. It has been proven that there was an event, I think it was 12,000 years ago, if I've got that number correct, where it was like there was an elimination of about somewhere between 63 and 75% of all of the creatures on the earth. And that could have been one of the cataclysms that people are saying that this would have been. You also might think to yourself, well, okay, I don't buy into this. I don't subscribe to this. But what you can't say no to is some of the things that we find in minerals and rocks that show us that there was a flood and there was fires. So if there was any human civilization, I'm not talking like high tech like this theory says, but if there was any human civilization, what do we have left over from then? What do we have left over, right?
You mentioned mud flood, and the first thing that came to mind for me is I'm blanking on their actual names, but the big rock heads.
Stonehenge.
No,
on
heads.
Easter Island.
Oh, Easter
Yeah.
Island.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Not
And
Stonehenge,
we ended
Easter
up
Island.
finding out that they're not just heads; they have whole bodies underneath them.
They got
Yeah,
whole
and they're
bodies.
underground.
Yeah.
A big part of this theory, right, is that during the cataclysm, many of the structures that we currently have are just sort of those tips of the iceberg, is like what you're calling them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you do any amount of research for the people that actually buy into it, they are convinced that a lot of our planet, we have these giant like cities underground that are just buried. And we've got actually excavation projects that unearth like huge, crazy cities. I've got one here that I can reference.
Wow.
Right?
City.
There is this thing called
God, don't crush me.
Göbekli Tepe, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing.
That sounds right.
We've
Say it with your
got
chest.
yeah, we've got a lot. During the course of excavation, we do find structures underground that are wild. And they're not just wild from the fact of like, how did we build these things without tools? Or we're told that the tools were used are like so rudimentary. But some of the things that align a certain way with like constellations or use certain symmetry or stuff like that, it starts to really suggest things, right? So it's really, I think it's really interesting. Personally, I don't buy into this. Personally, me, I'm a skeptic. I don't even buy into my own topic that I'm talking about. I feel like a lot of these people that perpetuate this theory are misguided. I think that there's explanations to everything. But I will say I'm open-minded to at least consider it. And I feel like I'm going to give myself some credit where other people are not like that. How do y'all feel about it? What do you think?
I've read something that I believe the pyramids, the corners on each side, are perfectly lined up north, south, east, and west. And looking at it, they're lined up with such exact precision that we're not even sure if we'd be able to do that on such a large scale today.
Yeah. They're also, they say they're aligned with Orion's belt specifically. And so are other pyramids that are around the world.
And I read something that if you go from the pyramids in Egypt to the pyramids in another continent, they also are lined up almost exactly.
The Mayan pyramids.
They exist in Mexico with the Mayans. They exist in Peru. There's pyramids all over the place.
Right.
That are the same exactness.
So we're not even sure if, we're pretty sure that we would not be able to build something to such a scale today, even with today's technology that was so perfectly lined up. It's interesting because it doesn't really seem like it would be a coincidence. It could be.
It's very intentional. It's clear that the way they were constructed is very intentional. And that lends to people saying, well, maybe we had help from aliens or extraterrestrials. And then if you think that, well, maybe we didn't have help from extraterrestrials. Maybe we just had the technology to actually do that ourselves. There's a lot of wild theories that go into this.
Yeah.
When you think about the technology with extraterrestrials, you fall down a rabbit hole where you even end up getting to a place where people believe that Jesus was an actual alien. Believe it or not, that's a thing. People believe
I believe it.
Jesus had these powers to heal and do things, but maybe it's just an alien that was using technology that was available to them. And that's part of it, right? These conspiracy theories, they all sort of want to connect to each other, and people find ways of connecting dots where they can kind of align, but maybe don't.
So I think that's the thing. Like, I have no issue with people questioning it because there's clearly things that we're not like 100% positive about. I think there's probably a reasonable explanation for all these things. We just don't know it, and that's okay. And it's okay to question it till we realize it, or like maybe we've misunderstood something. I do think people sometimes forget that like we had submarines in the Civil War. Like, sometimes I think we forget how advanced some technology actually
Or we attempt to do
was.
things that, like,
Yeah.
we see some of it. I'll talk about that in a second. But
Okay. But like, yeah, and I think that like at least with the layman coming up with these theories, like, and I'm sure they would give me the same excuse of like, well, that's too advanced too, yada yada. But I'm like, we were able to give vaccines during the Revolutionary War. Like we have advancements in technology and like pockets in places that are very bizarre.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, vaccines during that time were so important that there's a theory that some of our founding fathers during the Revolutionary War were blocking vaccines imported to the country. So, like, the other side was not able to give their troops the vaccine so they could survive the war. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. So, another thing I wanted to kind of touch on here, I feel like we're running longer than I thought I would, but there are these things that happened in the country, right? So, there's these things called the Georgia Guidestones. As you might imagine, in Georgia, there are these big stones that kind of look like a very miniature version of Stonehenge that appeared out of nowhere one day. And the people that walked up to them and tried to look at them, because they're out in the middle of Bufu, what it looked like was, first, it had like a language that we probably didn't understand. So that was interesting. But some of it was in English, and some of it looked like it was a plan for how to restart human civilization should a cataclysm or war or something actually happen. And what's interesting and why I feel like a lot of people took interest to the Georgia Guidestones was part of it, and a really scary part, was saying that we have a responsibility as humankind to maintain a population that's 500 million people. Guidestones are suggesting that we should be self-responsible for such a mass extinction event, which is wild. To give you a little bit of history, they're sort of debunked already. And obviously with conspiracy theorists, even though some things like can be fully debunked, people are like, oh, well, that's just made up and that's just a psyop, or like that's just the story, the narrative that we're being told. They were destroyed. You can no longer visit them. They were destroyed. People were really getting up in arms about them. I can say that. There is at least one person that's come out and said, well, I'm actually behind it. I was using this fake name, or I was using this name that was, based on this book. They were removed. And I think that the local government actually removed them for the safety of the public, because people were going there. They actually bombed it.
That's what I was going to say.
Some of them.
I thought they got bombed, like
They
the
did.
homemade bomb. Yeah.
They did. So from the perspective of like, okay, we've got these weird fucking things in our town. Yes, they're becoming a tourist attraction, but it's also attracting a lot of crazies, and now a bomb. Like, we need to get rid of them. So local government got rid of them. Conspiracy theorists will be like, oh, well, the government got rid of them, or, they weren't supposed to be out, or something. All kinds of stuff. So there's a rabbit hole there as well. I know that we're already maybe almost an hour into this, and we're just kind of scratching on the surface. I do
we're
want
not.
to talk to...
No, we're not.
No,
Well, we started, like 10 minutes late? Or was it
Yeah,
closer to 15?
Probably
Closer
more
to
than
15.
15.
All right, well...
we have 33 on the timer on the OBS
Oh, cool.
or on the stream. So yeah. So you're good. Go into it.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, realistically, guys, what do you think are the odds? What would you say is the percentage of like this could be real if you had to give it a percentage in your head? What is the what's the percentage that we're living post Cataclysm, and then B, give me a percentage of how likely it is that humans that lived prior to this were advanced in technology.
I think I'd have to ask you first, when do they think the cataclysm happened?
According to sedimentary rock, about, I think it's like 12,000 years ago is where they put it based on what stones tell us and carbon dating tells us.
I love how I asked you that and now you're like telling me the answer, which I thank you for, and I have no clue what time that is.
Well, yeah, so like the rock itself, and like if you're a fan of like Joe Rogan, he also covered this, and I just found it via research. I don't listen to Joe Rogan, but there was a geologist that was showing sedimentary rock that had, it almost looked like an Oreo cookie, where you've got rock, you've got limestone, then you've got like a black layer of carbon, which is just, burned matter, organic matter. And, you can't disagree with the fact that there was a huge fire at some point. And those same scientists were also showing the way that water affects the earth and what it kind of leaves behind, and the way that the land can tell you if there was a flood, what that looks like. And again, you can't really disagree with the fact that there were places on earth that did suffer giant floods. But you can disagree with what was life like prior to then, and what was technology like prior to then. And so it's weird how like some things are factual and you can't disagree with them. There's other things that are like, okay, but what about the pyramids, right? So it's a weird slippery slope that people take in their head.
So doing a quick Google search of 12,000 years ago, that would be towards the Neolithic Revolution, which is also known as the Agricultural Revolution. So after the last ice age, where we started to develop civilizations that would create farms. So I'm assuming roughly before Mesopotamia, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So
and Samaria, all that stuff.
Yeah. Was there Yes, there has to have been, because the ice age was.
Well, a lot of people say that the ice age was also part of the natural earth cycle as well. So
But
was it a cataclysm that was caused by the earth? Was it self-imposed? The ice age also doesn't really correlate with like huge fires that we have proof of that happening as well.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like at least when it comes to floods, if there's a huge melting, like there has to be floods. Like,
yeah.
right? Like logically,
Yeah,
there has to
that
be
part makes
floods.
sense. I'm just saying fire wouldn't make sense with flooding and melting. Well, fire would make sense with melting, but not with a lot of ice. So
Yeah.
depending on where you are looking at the earth, some places look like they experienced a big fire. Some places look like they experienced huge floods.
Okay. When that's not what I mean. When Vikings came over to America, they believed that they actually brought over earthworms accidentally, and it actually changed the complete landscape of the Americas, because before it was a bunch of like dead trees that didn't get eaten and pushed down into soil like we have today. If something like that, and I was thinking about like California has their fires because of, brush and things like that. So if it's that time period and there's a whole bunch of brush and like lightning sparks and there's nothing to stop like forest fires or like stuff, why couldn't there be fires?
I don't know.
Like, I don't know. I feel like a cataclysmic, maybe not something that happened all at once, but I can see a lot of many things happening, and that makes sense to me.
But that's the thing, is they did narrow it down to such a small time frame that it's probably like you woke up this morning, everything is good, afternoon rolls around, and by the time between afternoon and night, suddenly like somewhere again between 63% and 75% of the population dies off. So there's an event that happened.
Was Mars in retrograde? That could change my opinion.
I have
about
no
a lot of
idea.
things. No, I'm
I
kidding.
don't know. I don't even know what those words mean.
No, I'm just kidding. No, okay. Do I think there's a cataclysm? Yes. Do I think that there was modern technology prior to all of this? No. I think there was technology we don't understand, but I don't know how advanced I would say it is.
How about you, Kay? What do you think the percentages are?
I'm going to say at this point, honestly, I'm like 50-50 on it, because I mean, I do think that it could be very probable. Um, yeah, I
Do
mean,
you think, let me ask you this. In your neck of the woods,
mhm.
do you have some like really crazy structures where you're like, I don't know if the horse and buggy built that one?
I don't know if we have that per se. Just because the side of the US that I'm on is like we all kind of came over, I should
You
say.
came over with the
Europe-
Louisiana Purchase.
Europe came over
Yeah.
on the east side, and it took us a while to make it over here to the west side. So my side of the country, as far as settlers, European settlers are concerned, is not super old.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of the Western United States wasn't even settled until after the construction of the Intercontinental Railroad, which really allowed people to go back and forth very easily on the backs of immigrants, I might add. They built that. However, that's also part of the weird theory, right? So, like, when you really think about it, after that had been constructed, we're in the 1800s, and that's when a lot of our big, huge Baroque buildings with all these wild things were said to have been built, right? I can tell you that here in Illinois, we do have a lot of buildings like that are just nuts. Some of the buildings, yeah, absolutely, we built those. But it's just strange, especially when you're looking at Europe, because most of the people believe this society would have been not so much in America, but in Europe. But there are a few buildings in America that are questionable in their eyes as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at, cities like the Vatican, people are pretty much saying, like, okay, a city like the Vatican there could have been a city like that underground that got buried in the Cataclysm. Whatever that event might have been, whether it's a comet, whether it's something like that, don't know. But it could be there.
I will say, so when I'm, trying to figure all this out, I'm not looking at my neck of the woods, because my neck of the woods is only like 200 years old as far as what we know now. I know there were a lot of people here before that, but the structures as we know it are only about 200 years old. I would be looking more southern, like Mayan structures, things that are much older, that would start getting closer to that 12,000 year mark. I do think it's really interesting to think about. We used to have a lot more life on Earth that was a lot larger. We had the megalodon, we had Titanoboa, we had dinosaurs, we had all of these creatures, even gigantic plants that they say would not have been, they can't survive because the oxygen that was in the atmosphere thousands of years ago is not the same level that it is right now. So, I mean, that could kind of lead into a giant fire across a huge span of the Earth, that carbon layer. We have evidence of that, and we
do have a lot of evidence of a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, and we know that we have ice ages. We know that we have a lot of tectonic plate shifting. I mean, we had, what is it, Pangea?
Yep.
So, I mean, we talk about
it's crazy.
Yeah, like living over here in my area, growing up, we talk about the big one because we live on this massive fault where we could have like a 10.0 magnitude earthquake, and they say, it could put parts of Washington and Oregon and California underwater. So, I mean, if you think about Pangea, it's where we are now. A lot could have happened. So I'm like 50-50 on it. I don't have any hard evidence that say it did happen, but
even if
I could be convinced.
Even if you're a person of science and a person of science and you study volcanoes, you'll know that statistically speaking, I forget what the amount of years is, but every so many years, there's like a global ending volcanic eruption where everything will die. And we're actually overdue for it now, which is fun.
Yep.
Well, that's fine. I didn't need more anxiety, but thank you.
Have you not
That's a
heard
fact.
about that with Yellowstone?
Yeah, Yellowstone could erupt at any time. There's Mount St. Helene that erupted a few years ago that scared the shit out of everybody.
Are you talking about Mount St. Helens?
Mount St. Helens. I
I've
don't
heard
know why I
it.
said-
My mom
I've heard it
also
pronounced differently.
My mom also pronounces it Helene, and we're like, "What are you
We-
doing?"
when I was taught about it, it was pronounced Helens. Is it
Well,
Helens?
It's Mount St. Helens.
Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm telling. Okay, I'm also telling you. My mom also pronounces it Helene's.
That's so funny. Yeah. So
yeah.
for all of our listeners right now, including you guys, from an Oregonian, it is Mount St. Helens. Helens. Yeah. My mom, my grandparents and my mom have like a little bottle of ash from when that erupted.
My grandma, she's passed away, but had a bottle of ash, but it was like from somewhere, I think in the Midwest, actually.
Well, when that erupted, when Mount St. Helens erupted, the ash did reach the Midwest.
Yeah.
It could have been the same volcano.
But like
Yeah.
we had the forest fires in Canada years like last year. Oh my God, last year, but also the other year, the ones in California, New Jersey was covered. Like
Yeah.
we had
remember that.
smog and like smoke for days. We had to
I
wear
remember-
our masks last year.
So my commute used to be, if you're familiar with Chicago, anybody listening, I used to drive. Used to drive down Lakeshore Drive every day from almost where it starts all the way to the Loop. And one day, this one morning, I woke up and I'm like, man, it's really fucking foggy out today. But it's nothing out of the ordinary. Chicago's a foggy city sometimes. I remember getting to work and getting out, and my eyes just really stung that morning. I'm like, what the fuck? Why are my eyes so stingy? And then I realized as I'm walking into work, because I used to park in this garage, I'm like, wow, actually, that's the forest fire. That's all smoke. None of that is fog. And none of it was. And it stuck around for like, I think at least a weekend here. At least.
It was bad. We were told not to bring our pets outside and stuff like that for a very
Yeah,
long
that
time.
weekend when it was here, that week it was here is when President Biden was in town. And I just remember being at work, looking out the window at work, looking at the choppers that were flying in, because I had like a pretty good view of the entire lakefront. And I think they were flying them into like McCormick Place or like Millennium Park or something. But you can tell when it's like a military chopper coming in. It was kind of cool, actually.
I am. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Frank.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I am curious, Joan, if since you're farther away in the United States, if you've heard anything on Yellowstone, like if you've ever worried about that.
I mean, I've worried about it, but not for myself. I've worried about it because my brother is actually in Colorado. So,
Oh, gotcha.
you know, when I land in the Denver International Airport, there are moments where I'm like, this
We're
could be
going.
it. This could be
I don't know when
the
we're going,
moment.
but we're going.
I'm so glad. I'll just panic a little bit. It's fine. Don't worry about me. I just panic. Just panicking all the time.
If I go under Lucifer and he falls on me and I die, do not resuscitate.
That
was Frank.
Yeah.
I mean, not Frank. You're Frank. That was James.
I am me. What?
You can't go under Lucifer. He's in the middle of all the cars. You'll have a hard time.
I'll find a way.
Okay. I'm not stopping.
So let me ask you guys this. What are the odds, do you think? I know this is something that's really hotly debated amongst the people that have more of an open mind, I'd say. What do you think the odds are that there's actually giant humans that did exist at some point? Because we've got evidence. We do have some evidence that some of those people existed. Even when you think of things like the Amazon, there's like Amazonian women that they say were like much bigger than men, like modern men, right? Like there are things like that. There's that guy that a couple of years ago, I don't remember what his name was, but he's claimed to have evidence of giants. And he was going out to take pictures and video of them. And then he was mysteriously killed. Remember that guy?
I know who you're talking about. He was not. I'll send you a video. He was not killed. He did die.
All I remember is at the time he died.
He did
everybody's like,
die.
oh, it's because he got too close to the truth of there being giants.
I think people did say that, but he just had a very unfortunate life.
But that's the whole point of this is people are connecting dots
Yes.
that kind of connect. Like, did he die? Yes. But the reason the dot will go where it doesn't belong, right? That's how this conspiracy stuff works.
I believe there might be individuals and cultures that were very large. Like we see gigantism as a thing. I think we have more than enough bone research showing that like actually we were much smaller before. And also, you want to talk about structures? I have a friend who's 6'4", and he could not buy certain houses in our areas because they were built in the 1900s or late 1800s, and he can't fit through the doors.
Yeah, here's a interesting bit about Chicago. So Chicago was built on a swamp, basically. And we always had really, really bad flooding problems. And to fix this problem at some point, the city decided to literally just build the streets higher, like, I don't know, like 15 feet higher from where they belong, right?
Yeah.
And there are still houses in Chicago, especially like if you're familiar with like the Little Village or Pilsen area, you can actually still see some homes have their doors almost completely underground. And the sidewalk will come like almost up to like an old door, an old window. And that's why, because the whole city actually got raised for the flooding.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy stuff what we do in architecture, right? But when you think about it, let's say a cataclysm happens to us tomorrow, right? Chicago gets covered at least in, I don't know, 10 feet of dust and soot and ash and whatever. You know, eventually we get excavated, and they're going to wonder why a lot of us were underground, or a lot of the buildings are underground, if we're not here to kind of talk about it, right?
We were, in fact, mole people.
We do make weird decisions architecturally, is what my point is.
I love that whole, like, so first off, my like other example of this is like we don't actually know what dinosaurs look like.
Some people think they look like birds, and some people think they look more traditional like Jurassic Park.
So we think they probably look like birds, but also we just don't know what color things they are. And like if you look at the way that they form how we think dinosaurs look compared to what, like if they did that same on like modern skeletons of like cats and things like that, they wouldn't look that way because we don't know what the muscle is. So like we've made things up and it's ridiculous. Woolly mammoths used to be thought to be cyclops, and that's how we got that myth, because people just saw like if you see a woolly mammoth skull, there's just a huge hole in the middle, and then tusks, and they're like, that must be a person with one eye. That's the only thing that can make sense.
So let me say this to you also, right?
Yeah.
So we have this certain predisposition of what we've been kind of taught that dinosaurs look like. Where scientifically speaking, they may not look like they do in movies, they may not sound like they do in movies, or whatever we're taught. You know, but isn't it interesting how, I don't know if I know that I'm a 90s kid. I was born in 1986, so I kind of had my childhood in the 90s, and in the 90s, dinosaurs were such a huge thing. And I can tell you that the moment.
Wait, when were you born?
1986.
Oh, I thought you said 96, and I was like, that's not
No.
right.
1986 is my birth year.
Not to call you out, Frank. I was like, that's not true. That can't be right.
No, that's not true. So my point is, when a lot of these theories started coming out, like dinosaurs actually may look like birds and may have had feathers and all these things, they may not sound what we think they sounded like. There was so much pushback from some of the people within the paleontology community, because we were taught that they were a certain way. And it gets to the point where they almost started taking like a personal offense to it, because they've got a degree in paleontology and they're subscribed to like, we think they look like this. And it's almost like this weird, they start to make it something weird and personal when you start to challenge what they were sort of taught in school and what they got their degree on. Some of that parallels into this, where there's some scientists out there, when they start to get challenged with the official history, with some of these things that are, circumstantial evidence, they're not even willing to have an intelligent conversation, which is why, ironically, I think this theory gets perpetuated, right? So I just think it's really interesting. Even when you talk about dinosaurs, it kind of parallels this a little bit.
I can understand why it would be annoying for some people to have to engage in this conversation, especially with how discourse has gone in the recent past about certain scientific findings and standards and things that like we know to be scientific law, and trying to like re-explain to somebody what a theory is and why it's a theory and not a law and yada yada. I can understand why that's annoying. I do think you are right in the way that when you don't engage in these conversations and teach laymen, there's almost this mentality of what are they hiding from us?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which
100%.
like sometimes it's not that they're hiding, they just don't feel like explaining to you that the earth is not flat.
People will start inventing conspiracies to explain alternate theories on things.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who seeks out conspiracy videos to kind of watch because I find them very interesting. Let me tell you a story. This one night, it's like 3 a.m. I'm half asleep anyway, just clicking on whatever link to fucking BitChute or Rumble that I can find to watch whatever kind of bullshit. And I'll just like literally go to threads, just like, give me a cool video to watch. And somebody be like, check out this documentary. One time I put in a documentary and I realized maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes in that it was a documentary in support of flat Earth. And
took you 20 minutes.
then I shut the fucking thing off and went back to the comments in that thread. I'm like, what am I like?
What am I
When
looking
were you going
at?
to tell me this was about flat Earth, right? Because obviously that's absurd.
Yeah.
So looking at the comments, it turns out some of the people who describe themselves as being enlightened and knowing everything will say that flat Earth was a psyop conspiracy theory that was invented to discredit people who believe in conspiracies. So it's almost like the government planted the idea of flat Earth in some people's mindset, so they clearly look crazy. So then those flat Earth people will be associated with people who actually have conspiracies that actually may be real. And you start to associate those people together and you're like, oh, well, Frank, you think 9/11 was an inside job. You probably think the Earth is flat too. Like the people who like think that they're enlightened say like, oh, that's why flat Earth exists, because it's clearly very absurd. But like it's weird how we have these theories and there are people out there that will take something that can be very scientific and associate like a conspiracy with it. I think that's like one of the most interesting things. And on that same parallel, it's also very interesting how when you read about some of these theories, this one included, there's so many like religious and spiritual implications as well. And people really go off the deep end with that and say that there's so much like spirituality in this. A lot of the evidence or a lot of the suggested circumstantial subjective evidence is also tied into spirituality, where we have texts that say that there was a civilization prior to us and there was technology there that we don't have anymore, right? So it's kind of kooky.
I mean, it goes into hot topic that's going on right now in our September 30th, 2024 with the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Like that is part of the Church of Latter-day Saints belief systems, is that there was a boat that was able to go from like Israel to Missouri, I believe, or at least end up in America somehow. And that's part of the belief system. And I'm sure while you were saying this, and not to like call out specific religions mythology, but like it reminded me of that, of like that's probably something that would go more towards like, of course we had more advanced technology. That's how we got the ship over here.
I mean, without saying that religion, one that I'm very cognizant that probably shouldn't be talking about is I like to think about science to write this type of fiction shit. But it's wild how A, people begin to accept that as a history, and then B, they're tying in spirituality with conspiracy with history.
You better be careful, Frank.
I might edit all that out.
Frank would just like to say that he is very content with his life currently.
If you guys want to hear a funny story, this is a true story, okay?
Do we want to hear a funny story?
No, this is really funny.
Okay.
And I might edit this. I'll probably edit it out. So I was on maybe date number 3 or 4 with my now wife. And we were walking down a street here in Chicago. And that particular church, if you want to call it a church, has a lot of presence here in this particular city, as they do in many metropolitan cities.
That makes sense.
We happened to walk by this particular church rented out a whole storefront, and they have TVs playing propaganda in the storefront. Okay, because that's like a made up technology. But like
it's a very real technology, just certain people.
You walk by and you're like, what are these TVs? What is this business? What are they selling? And I remember walking by with Kim, and I was like, man, look at this fucking place. I'm like, do you know what this is? This is this. And she for a moment, she wasn't sure if I was just saying like, look at this crazy. And she wasn't sure if I was about to be like, this is my religion. And for the moment in time, in the brief minute or two when I was talking, where she was trying to decide if it was like, if I was about to say it was my religion, she was already looking for a way to escape from that date.
Oh, no.
And after I was like, we should get the fuck out of here. She's like, oh my God, I'm so happy that you didn't say that.
I would have been like, so I get to be a sugar baby is what I'm understanding.
Another fun fact, Ashley, who used to be on this particular show, decided her and a friend were going to go troll this church and went in and had a session done and were trolling the people that were administering it to the point where they got kicked out. If you want to hear about that episode, go back in our history. I think a little bit more than a year, probably like a year and like 6 months ago or a year and 3 months ago, something like that. We did that episode. That was really cool.
It was an interesting episode I did.
Did you I think it was the one that's entitled You're a Psychic, Ashley.
Yeah.
Because I think somebody had told her that she has that gift.
Yes. I think because she was talking about other cults she tried to get into. Usually when people come up to me to talk about different religious things, I usually tell them I'm good with my provider right now. And it does throw them off a little bit. I'm good with my provider at the moment, thank you.
Yeah.
It's better than screaming I'm a witch. But not
It's
that I
almost
am
like a
one,
weird sales thing, right? I always like to do this thing. I don't know if you guys walk with your partners through like a Costco. There's always those people at the T-Mobile stand when you walk in that's right by the door, and they try to ambush your wife because they know like she's like a target. She probably would be too nice to say no. So like that happens. So like every time I go to Costco with my Kim, I'm like, switch sides with me just so I could be on the side of the salesman so I can tell them to fuck off as we walk by.
Yeah.
I know I told you guys a story about the solar salesman on the way out of Costco where I like jump in the middle between that person and my wife as well. So I can just be like, no, thanks. Not interested.
I'm so bad with them. Not like I just like keep walking and just go, no.
Do you do eye contact or do you not even give them eye contact?
Sometimes I'm looking for something and they make eye contact with me. And the last time I went to Costco, when I was attacked by the tree.
Oh.
And I was having a bad day already, and I forgot not to make eye contact with anyone.
See, like Kay over here, she already self-disclosed that she does not even give the eye contact.
No.
I didn't mean to. And usually at my Costco, they're not usually that way. Like there's on a rare occasion, and like I walked by, and this AT&T guy was like, "Do you want to like sub-a-ba?" Like he was talking to me, and I went, "No, I'm good." He goes, "Oh, you Verizon?" And for some reason, I answered yes. I should have just kept walking, and I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." I wanted to be like, "Sir, I got attacked by a tree."
I love the fact that they'll take any interaction that you have with them as like, you know that scene in Dumb and Dumber where he's like, "So you're saying there's a chance?" Even like eye contact is like, "So you're saying there's a chance?"
There's a chance.
I feel so bad. So we have door-to-door salesmen that come to our house all the time. All the time.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time they're so aggressive, the only thing that you can do is shut the door in their face. Like, it does not matter what you say, they will keep talking. You can say, "I'm not interested" 1,000,000 times, and they will keep going until you shut the door.
That is so interesting because many of the towns I've lived in have a no soliciting thing. And I think the only people who've been able to get through in the one town I lived in was Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's like the only one.
Do you know who we have here in the Chicago area? We've got 2 scammers. Most of the time. So here's the thing. I don't know about y'all where you live. Here in Illinois, the only electricity provider who does have a monopoly is ComEd. Do you guys have ComEd or do you have a different electric company?
Okay. They have different ones.
ComEd owns all of the physical equipment that delivers electricity around here. However, obviously monopolies are against the law. So in Illinois, you can buy electricity from another provider, but those other providers that attempt to compete with ComEd still need to lease out the same equipment to deliver electricity to your home. So you might think, how do they do that? So what they do is, when there's all these scammy companies like People's Electricity, what they'll do is they'll approach you and be like, "Do you want to save some money on your ComEd bill?" And what they'll do is they'll charge you the same amount of money for the electricity that you're getting, plus they'll charge you a little bit more so they can rent out the equipment and still make their margin. So realistically, the only scenario where you would save money is if ComEd was periodically upcharging you every year and you just didn't know it. And then they're able to negotiate it down to what the rate should be, plus their margin, plus the amount to license out the equipment to deliver the electricity. But we've got all these people that go door to door, try to sell you subsidized electricity from ComEd, who you're already paying for, which is a complete scam. And I live in an apartment building where it's not a door that's open to the public. Like, you have to have a fob to even get in. We've had people on my floor knock on my door to be like, "Let me try to sell you electricity." I'm like, "Get the fuck out of my building. I'm going to walk you out."
I would call somebody.
So
I'm very bad about
we
that.
did. No, we did.
Okay.
And here's another story that's hilarious. When I was 17, Okay, I was looking for a job and I replied to a marketing job on Craigslist. I went to school for design. I was in school for design at the time. Design and marketing go hand in hand. And I remember going to this interview in Oak Brook, Illinois, which is where McDonald's headquarters is located and Chipotle headquarters. And I went to this office building that was almost vacant. And I walked in. I wasn't wearing a suit, but I sat in this office where it was like clearly a rented office. And there's all these men my age, like, 18 to like 23 in really cheap suits like that you'd get from like a Ross or whatever, like a Burlington Coat Factory type of deal. Ill-fitting suits, kids. And I remember I went in and they're like, fill this out. And it's like an application. They want your social, which I didn't put in there. And I started getting these weird vibes. I'm like, what kind of marketing job is this? And so like I had one interview with some person who just wanted to know about my personality. He's like, I just want to know about you. Tell me about yourself. So I kind of told him my spiel. And he's like, here's what I want to do. I want you to go out with one of our guys and kind of work a day, see if you like it, and then we'll choose to hire you or not. Here's what your income potential might be, which is like crazy income. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I will only prepared to do like maybe an hour of my time for this interview. So what are you saying? Go out and work? He's like, yeah, go out, take a couple hours and go out there. And you don't have to work. You could just tag along and shadow, see if you like it. And I wasn't doing anything after. I'm like, I fucking guess. And so he paired me with some guy who greeted me. I shook his hand and he was like, do you want a carpool? You get my car. I'm like, no, I'll take my own car to wherever we might go. And so I followed him and he was with another guy. It was two guys in these really cheap suits. And I got to his car and he started putting a hard hat on that was in his trunk. And then he took like a weird lanyard out of his trunk and it said AT&T on his lanyard, on his ID. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what is this? And so he explained to me that what they do is they present themselves as being AT&T, which we know is a phone provider, and they knock on doors doing door to door, but it's really not door to door, it's business to business. And they go in and say, I'm from AT&T. I want to see if I can save you money. Can you go get your phone bill for me? Which should be a red flag to like literally anybody. Okay. And they were just going in to rip people off and they subsidize the service and they overcharge people and they make it becomes passive income because that company makes income every single month. That salesman will get a one-time commission for selling. It's a sales job. It's not marketing at all. And then that owner of this sketchy ass company makes passive income permanently from every person that they happen to rip off. And I knew immediately, like, this is not for me. So I was just trying to like be like, what advice can you give me to be successful? Should I choose to join your company? And I'm already looking for a moment to like bail out. Right. And the guy was like, my advice to you. And this is literally what he told me. He's like, my advice to you, do not look up the owner. There's a lot of stuff online about the owner. There's lawsuits against him. Don't read any of that. Don't buy into that. Just, value the interactions that you personally have with the owner and don't go on what you read online and don't look him up. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get the fuck out. And I left. And it was like, kind of like the scariest thing, but at the same time, kind of like, oh my God, what kind of people like get brainwashed into doing this,
Men who are used to being in groups of other men, because as a woman, all of that sounded terrifying to me. And if I ever heard about like, no, like trust
there
my
were
like
women
trust
doing
my
it,
friend,
though.
don't look my friend up. Like, just how do you feel when you interact with him?
There were women in that office. There were women that were going out to go door to door with these fake hard hats. And we have it here in the suburbs too. Like I remember, so my parents, we bought a house in Addison, Illinois. The prior owners of the home had ADT. Do you guys have ADT?
Yeah.
You guys are? Okay. So the prior owners of my parents' home had ADT and they had a big sticker in the window, like proud ADT. And while my family lived in Addison, periodically we'd have these fucking people knock on the door that's saying they are ADT and they want to inspect our system. But my family never had ADT. The system was taken out by the prior owner. And here are these jagoffs like, hey, we're ADT. We want to come into your home to inspect it.
No.
And my mom would call the police every single time.
No.
Because they're lying. They're scam artists, right? And they want entry into your home.
Yeah, no one comes in my house. Not at all.
The guy that came to my house a couple days ago was like, I'm from so-and-so company. He's selling solar. And he was like, I'm so and so's manager, and he said that he wasn't in that. The person that he talked to was not the same person as you, but they said they weren't interested. So I'm here to follow up. And I was like, hold on. Are you from the same company that came 2 days ago and talked to my husband? And he said no. And he's like, yes, that's the company that I'm from. I'm following up. I just want to see what your holdups are, talk about them to you. And I'm like, that's so weird that they would send another person out after we've already said no. But I just looked at him and I told him, like, I'm sorry, buddy, there's nothing that you can say to get me to put your solar panels on my house. And I could just see he was just kind of like deflated a little bit. I'm like, can I get you a water bottle and send you on your way?
Yeah. I wouldn't even give him a water bottle. That's nice of you. No, like usually you can tell people who like legitimately work for things and people who don't work for things. My example is we had something go on with our meters. Like the whole town was having it. So like I knew about it. And like the person who did it, when they answered my door, knocked on my door and then walked like 5 feet away from my door. And that's usually a telltale sign that like they're like, I don't want to come off as a threat to you and I'm not going to come into your home. And that's probably the only reason I would actually talk to them.
I saw a rage bait video. You know these rage bait videos where they want you to get angry when you watch these videos? I saw Kimberly reminded me here, but I saw a video of a salesman that knocked on a door or rang a bell. And some of the Ring cameras or some of the cameras that are like that, like you can talk out the doorbell. You can be like, not interested, go away. And it's like a speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this one salesman where like the owner was like, go away, not interested, whatever. And the salesman was like, come on, man, like help a brother out. Just at least hear what I got to say. And the owner's like, not interested, go away. And the guy's like, well, how about a water bottle?
No.
And it was rage bait because like it makes you so upset that the salesman was such an asshole and still asked for like a water bottle. And it's like, no, man.
No.
No, absolutely
down
not.
the street. I don't want to give you anything. Get out of here.
Nope.
Speaking of which, do we want to? Oh, sorry. Go with your thing. I was gonna say final thoughts. Maybe
I was
after
going to say,
that?
should we do final thoughts?
Yeah,
Because
let's
people
do
are
it.
probably like, I don't want to keep listening to them talking about their soliciting.
You know, I know we went over the hour here, but I'm going to cut it down to about 20 minutes of actual episode and content after I cut out everything I'm going to cut out.
Okay. Final thought. My final thought. I didn't form. I said that we should do that and didn't think about it. My final thought is that I understand that it is frustrating to engage with these conversations with people who maybe dive too much into conspiracy theories. But I do think it is important to try to educate them if you're in a place to do so. I know we've talked about it quite a bit, but a lot of conspiracy theories do not come from the best places when it comes to certain groups of people. And I do feel like it's okay to talk about them. But at least like I personally feel it's my job while talking about them to acknowledge the not so nice sides of them and say like, I acknowledge it. It's part of the reason why I probably don't believe in it, to be honest with you. Not that I had this with this one, but just in general, just as like a tidbit about conspiracy theories if you don't believe in them.
I don't believe in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. And I wanted to talk about it because I still love it.
Yeah.
My final thought is I would argue that Frank maybe does think it's real because he was like, it's true. It's in the rocks. Look.
It's in the rocks.
It's in the rocks.
Listen, there is sedimentary evidence of a cataclysm. But whatever the circumstances were that caused it and what human civilization may or may not have been prior to that is what I would probably disagree with.
Yeah.
Frank is actually a crystal mommy. And he comes and he shows us all his rocks.
When we go off air, I'm going to show these girls my pendulum.
Ooh.
It's how I make my life decisions.
Ooh.
I'm actually a little concerned at that.
I'm not a weird rock person. You don't have to worry.
They're
not
called
weird.
crystals, Frank. It's okay.
I'm not a weird crystal person.
HR Harrison representative is not in the room right now, and I feel unsafe. Frank said he's going to show me his pendulum after the show.
Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah. That's actually right.
Yeah.
When you say it like that, say it like that. We're going to need to talk to Harrison.
Ooh, bring him back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about a fancy civilization, but I think something happened. I mean, something happened to all the dinosaurs and the big plants and whatnot. So I think I think it's fun. I know a lot of people get super serious about conspiracy theories, but I enjoy it. Like, whether you believe it or not, it's fun to just kind of think about it.
That's where my headspace is. It's just fucking fun to think about. That's where I am with all conspiracies. I just like reading about it. I just like thinking about it. I don't believe shit. Especially with this one, it's like a lot of people who are connecting dots. Like the dots exist, but like how they're connected is just totally fictional, right? So like I think it's fun to talk about. I think that the videos on TikTok are fun to watch, so check those out if you're a TikToker. I am not, but those videos also exist in other platforms. But if you are so inclined, I would say that what is beneficial, and I think the reason I might do it, is I think that it's beneficial to have an open mind. It's an open mind also. I think the bigger lesson, if there's a lesson to be learned here, is to be open-minded about being wrong. Challenge your beliefs a little bit, and I feel like it could be a very healthy thing if you do it within moderation. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people kind of wake up every day with whatever, and they're just not open to being wrong about anything. And I think that's a really shitty way to live. Like, you know, be open to a different perspective even. It could be helpful to you. It's healthy. You know, if somebody's like, I don't think you're right, and here's why. Like, don't just dismiss them. I think that the bigger lesson here is for everyone to sort of acknowledge what somebody is saying and be like, okay, let's talk about it. And it's not to say let's talk about it and I'm going to tell you how you're wrong. Go into it with okay, let me figure out what's going on. That's really how we should be as people. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for telling a friend. Thank you to everyone who has helped us achieve the now 100K plus listens that we have on just Spotify. I believe the number as of earlier today is 103,000 listens for this little tiny show. And I can't say thank you enough. We're going to be doing a giveaway. We don't know if it's going to be interactive. We don't know if it's going to be a raffle or a lottery. Probably going to not do a lottery based on the Mr. Beast stuff, but we will provide details as soon as we figure them out. And if we do a lottery, there'll be no purchase necessary. And, you know, look forward to a good spooky season. We're going to introduce, I think, some new staff, and it's going to be fun. And what's really cool is it's not going to end at spooky season. We have a really good November lined up, too. It's going to be great. I know we're going to take December off, but we're still going to have content for everybody to kind of watch during the holidays like we did last year and years prior. So be on the lookout, and we will see you all next week when we're going to be doing, what are we doing, Joan?
Christina Bloom.
Christina Bloom. And then
Christina
after that,
Bloom.
Stormfrog and Paige, our friends Stormfrog and Paige. And then after that, the Halloween special. And then after that, I don't know. But have a good night, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.